Okay, welcome back to Thrive in the Future. This week I have Roman with me. Welcome back, Roman.
All right, thanks for having me. Excited to be back.
You bet. So you were on episode 80 almost 2 years ago when we were talking about climate change and helping kids through anxiety and all that other stuff. And people said that it was like the most reasonable conversation they had ever heard on climate change. So we got a lot of good
Oh,
comments out of that.
wow,
And
that's heartwarming.
yeah. So what have you been doing since then, and what new stuff have you got going on?
Oh my goodness. I think so. Back then when we last spoke, I was focusing on teaching classes online,
Hmm.
and what I've positioned into now is more trying to get more parents involved, right?
Mm.
Because that has a much larger effect. So right now I'm helping parents who are homeschooling uh, start spending more time in nature. I'm helping teachers who want to bring nature into their classroom, public school or charter school classrooms. And then helping adults who want to start nature clubs or gardening clubs on the weekend.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I like you just spun up your Substack, and I really like the articles you've been doing as well as your tweets. And I really like tell a little bit about your tracking training.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and a lot of those are old, so I have to dust them off and update some of the essays. But it's one thing I do enjoy. It's kind of always been on my bucket list. So I'm trying to write a little bit more. And tracking is always a part of that. There's couple of different definitions for tracking. Uh, the basic ones are, following an animal trail. When we think
Hmm.
of um, Tom Brown the third, he says tracking is just being a student of life.
Hmm.
I love that. Um, but for me, tracking is just pattern literacy, just learning how to understand patterns. And I like that because it kind of ties into Christopher Alexander and the work of pattern literacy, permaculture, regenerative agriculture. All of that is just reading patterns. And kids are amazing at reading patterns, they do it naturally.
Sure.
So it's just sort of cultivating that and polishing that. It's just comes naturally to us. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, that sounds neat to be able to take kids and then say, look at this track, what do you think it is, and help them to both live in the moment as well as see see the shapes and see the patterns and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of people say they feel intimidated by it.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh gosh, there's so much to learn and this and that. But so my response to that is I say, like, if you pass by a sign that has a yellow M, what restaurant is that? And they know, right? Or if you see a shoe with three stripes on it, what is it, right? We know patterns, we know symbols, we know outlines and silhouettes. Our brains just work naturally like that. And that's all tracking really is just seeing that shape and recognizing it. And same thing for plants, same thing for flora. Um, recognizing if the leaves are alternate or if they're opposite, those sort of things. And it's just one of the beautiful things that humans do. And some make the case that tracking gave rise to literacy, music, art, community, those sort of things.
Wow. So yeah, explain a little bit more about that. How would tracking give rise straight to those things?
Um, there's a fascinating book by Louis Liebenberg. I might be mispronouncing the last name, but it's the uh, the art of tracking as the origin of science, right? So the scientific method,
Hmm.
hypothesis, and all of that. Um, and reading those patterns, the theory is that we came up with concept of time because you could look at a track and know where it's going and the direction the animal is going. So you can say in the past it was that way. Right now we're looking at it and which way is it headed? It's going to be there if we if we intersect it or cut it off in the future. So there's a theory that tracking gave rise to the concept of time,
Hmm.
at least linear time. And then seeing the track marks that align, the chicken scratches, whatever you call it, helped us understand that a symbol can represent something. And so the theory is that that gave rise to hieroglyphics or ideograms or pictographs or even just letters that we see. So if we know the letter A, it's just 3 lines, that symbol um, comes to symbolize the letter A in our minds. So the
Wow.
same thing with the track, we could see a track and know it's a canine, and then we can deduce from there if it's dog, coyote, fox, wolf, that sort of thing.
Hmm. Wow, that's exciting. I'd like to get my grandkids into that. That'd be great.
Well, it's great because it's all a story. So the easiest way I have for tracking, and this is the method that it's bulletproof. If you need, or any of the listeners need a hint, tips for working with kids, is just asking the 5 questions of who, what, when, where, why.
Hmm.
So if you come across a track, you don't even necessarily have to know what it is. You don't have to be an expert. You don't need a field guide. You can just ask, who made this, right? And already you have introduced this like mystery
Hmm.
question to the kids. Who made this, right? What was it doing here? Was it passing through? Was it running away? Was it sleeping, right? Where is it going? Why was it here of all places on earth, right? And so that the why question helps connect kids to the bioregion. So if you ask why was the animal here at this spot, then it's probably there's food nearby, there's water nearby, there's habitat, there's safety, right? It might be any number of directions you can go with that. So you ask who, what, when, where, why, and then you can also ask how was the animal feeling, right? So if it was looking for food, it was probably hungry. If it was running for its life, it was feeling scared.
Hmm.
And so for me, that helps teach compassion and being able to look at the world through the eyes of an animal. It creates sort of a bond too.
Sure.
But yeah, you don't have to have all the answers. You can just ask, what do you think was happening, and let's follow it. And every track, I like to say, is like a word or a sentence in a story. And the more words and the more sentences that you put together, the story starts to unfold, before your eyes. So you
Wow.
could spend you could go anywhere from an afternoon to an entire week just looking at one track and connecting it to everything from history to math to science.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. So you've been involved with the forest schools before, and you've posted about it's a good way to get kids who are, ADHD, air quotes, um, you know, more evened out because they're outside. So how are you integrating that with the homeschool parents that you're working with?
That is probably one of the top questions I get. One of the
Really?
questions is about, yeah, one of the questions about academics, like how can I make sure, my kids are learning subjects outside,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a natural question that they have. Another one is my kid has this, or my kid has been diagnosed with that. Do you still think this is good for them?
Right.
Because we have this idea that kids are squirrely, and if we let them outside, they're just going to run off and disappear in the woods. But really, all that energy is it's just curiosity, right? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
natural joy and energy that kids have. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you take them outside, there's a million things they can look at. There's a million things they can discover, from trees to climb to creeks to play in to tracks to look at to flowers to smell, um, insects to catch, you know. And so their natural curiosity is going to find a million outlets, right? And that works really well for kids with ADHD or anybody on the spectrum, right? They find that nature is really therapeutic, or it helps even them out, it helps balance them out, it helps ground them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those symptoms, maybe they don't disappear, but they are somewhat counterbalanced by nature. And it does have a calming effect.
Hmm. That's pretty neat. So, and we talked a little bit about this before, but for the people who don't have the background, how does a forest school or what you're doing, being outside, how do you incorporate that? That's the other question you were talking. You said you're asked the most. How do
Mhm.
you involve the subjects into that um, type of environment, right?
Sure. There's different approaches, right? Some are based on Montessori, Waldorf, Reggio,
Mm.
Charlotte Mason, all the different homeschools. You can take a curriculum outside a traditional public school curriculum or a homeschool curriculum. You could take them outside and still do that, and it would be wonderful, right? The kids would have
Hmm.
fresh air and sunshine and vitamin D, and they would hear, the bird song and everything while they do their traditional subjects. And
Hmm.
even that alone has shown to help improve academics and well-being and health of the child. So you can be very straightforward in that sense, or very traditional. You could also allow the child to sort of choose their own path, right? So there's numerous times when I've taken kids out into the woods for a class, and we might have something in mind. We might be headed towards the garden to work for the day, but we might come across a kill site or a skull that we find, and now all of a sudden, um, our topic for the day has changed, and
Hmm.
that's fascinating too because then it's children are very adaptable, nature is adaptable, and we can turn on it and say, okay, cool, let's study this skull for a while. What happened here? And from looking at that kill site, maybe something killed a deer, or we had an elk show up near our classroom once that had been shot and not recovered. So it had stumbled a few hundred yards. The hunters never found it, and it sort of laid to rest near our classroom. So hiking out to it one day, we discovered a dead elk.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, it's tragic that it wasn't recovered by the hunters, but it was a great learning opportunity for the kids. So we always have nature journals, right, that the kids bring with them all the time so they can do sketches of it. So that way we can incorporate art, right?
Hmm.
We can write about what we saw and our discoveries from the day. And then through their writing, you can look at it and can cover grammar, spelling, literacy, those sort of things. You could also, depending on the age group, you could incorporate math, whether you're talking about the length of the tracks or the gait that you're measuring, the weight of the animal, um, any number of factors like the distance it went. Um, and then science, of course, is one of the easiest to do. And the kids are running around and looking for clues and everything. So PE and physical education is covered. So
Sure.
all the bases are right there.
Hmm. And you have them doing real on hand, hands-on stuff, so they're getting their math that way, right? Measuring and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all hands-on. That's a beautiful thing too.
Hmm.
So one of the differences is, you could have a PDF or a printout worksheet of the aquatic invertebrates that live in a creek, right? And the kids could learn it that way. Or you take them out to a real creek and give them a net and they could start scooping it up and studying it under a microscope. So hands-on is always better. And again, it goes back to helping the kids who might be on the spectrum, the kids who like more physical activities, the kids with really scientific brains. It's the hands-on is always going to be better than just standard worksheets that you hand out to them.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. So I liked your recent Substack article about valuing the marginal, and then not only, everybody thinks of homeschool, okay, where I'm going to deal with the little kids, and some people give up, and then they send their teenagers back to public school. So one of the things you were talking about is how to integrate the teenagers more. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I thought that was really interesting and revealing.
Yeah, that's one that's near and dear to my heart because with a lot of forest schools, a lot of outdoor schools, environmental education schools. They all have like a kindergarten and elementary program. Middle school starts to taper off, and
Hmm.
then it's, becomes even increasingly more rare in high school. So the older you get, the less options there are. So that's one factor. Another factor is teenagers, um, have this natural impulse to rebel, right? And so they're sort of finding out their role in society, and they're not quite kids and they're not quite adults. So they're
Hmm.
kind of in limbo, and that's a factor. Peer pressure, hormones, all sorts of stuff that they're going through. It's a very difficult time for them. And so I think that teenagers, need nature therapy, working in the outdoors, getting in touch with creation, getting dirt under their fingernails. I think that's very helpful for them during
Hmm.
those rebellious stages. And some anthropologists have found that teenagers who are more involved with like hunting rites and hunting ceremonies and contributing, putting food on the table, um, they have less of that sort of teenage angst and rebellion and anxiety that we see. So I don't know, it's just something I think they get lost in our planning. And so people obviously think of kids, and then um, teenagers, they can sort of, they're more independent. So we don't really incorporate them as much as we should when it comes to working in the garden, doing projects like that. Same thing with elderly folks, they're sort of pushed to the margin and put in these, uh, homes. They found that nursing homes that do have kind of gardening programs that have outdoor activities, it helps with the cognitive ability of the elderly folks. It helps with their physical health, their mental health, adds longevity and sharpness to
Hmm.
them as well. So working outside for them is great. And actually, a friend of mine was hired by a nursing home to teach tracking to the elderly folks. So essentially, um, they had a courtyard where they got wheeled out, or they came out on their walker or canes, and they sat down outside, and he just started talking about the birds and the cloud patterns and everything, and they loved it, and it became a regular class that they had from now on.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you teach the teenagers? One of the things you said is to treat them sort of like mini adults or something like that. What that was interesting. How do you go about that?
I think giving them responsibility
Hmm.
shows that they can be trusted. It gives them a little bit of it fills them with a sense of self-worth, I think, because they're not patronized and talked down to, and told that they're not treated like a child,
Right.
right? So I think giving them responsibility is fantastic, and that can be very hands-on. You can just observe them from a distance and make sure they're being safe, whether it's with a tool or um, what have you. Also, teenagers, I feel, do really well modeling. So if they're be put into a mentorship position, that's often what I do when I'm working with a mixed age group
Hmm.
classroom. I have the older kids sort of team up with some of the younger ones, right? And so the younger ones will look up to the older ones. They're like, oh, it's cool. I'm hanging out with a cool teenager. And that's fine for me because I'm sort of like the boring uh, authority figure. So I'm the dork that the kids don't look up to. So now they can just interact with one another. For the teenagers, they have someone that they're taking under their wing,
Hmm.
right? So they have they take that position very seriously. And so I think teaming up like that works. It's done in a lot of cultures, and it gives the teenagers sort of a footing, a foothold, and helps them create a bridge towards adulthood and seeing what kind of responsibilities those are going to be like.
Hmm. Well, that's great. So you've moved from the West Coast over to Appalachia. What are some of the things you're doing to your new place? over the next year that you're really looking forward to?
Gosh, doing a lot of planting a lot of trees. Today I was out getting the garden beds ready, digging up potatoes,
Wow.
played in the creek. Um, it's always important to find time to play or take a break or go explore, even as adults.
Hmm.
I think Thoreau called walking maybe um, like the tonic of wilderness. Everybody should walk and get outside for a little bit each day,
Yeah.
clear their head. Doing that right now. We've got I'm milking a British white cow every morning, and we just had a lamb born maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm getting all the other sheep ready. They're going to be lambing soon, and got a pretty full dance card.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, well,
So
we try
what
to put
trees are you growing?
a lot of pawpaws we planted,
Hmm.
um, a lot of varieties of pawpaws, and as well as chestnuts, and trying to bring those back to this area was so important. My wife has grafted a lot of hawthorns,
Really?
different hawthorn varieties. There's some wild hawthorns growing around here,
Hmm.
and so what we usually do when we move into a place is we do a lot of edible landscaping.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we enjoy. That's how we relax. That's our entertainment. That's our calling. And so everywhere we go, we try to um, add flowers and medicinal plants and a lot of native plants. And so it's just a lot of that, a lot of upkeep, and trying to leave the place a little bit more beautiful than it was when we moved in.
Yeah, I have a quarter-mile driveway, and at the end of the day, I'll walk down to the mailbox, and I don't remember the walk down there at all. But then when I turn around and I look back and I see the blue sky in the background, because I'm sort of facing the northwest at that point, or northeast, excuse me, and then it's just like all of a sudden I walk back slowly. I say, "Oh, well, wow, that garden bed is comfrey's coming back. This is I'm starting to see, buds on the apple trees. Oh, this doesn't look right. I'll fix it or pull something up or a weed or whatever." And that daily observation, you know, that especially now this time of year because it's like every day it's something different. Every day it's progression. It doesn't just turn spring all at once. It's little things.
Well, that's the pattern literacy. That's reading patterns, everything from clouds to the weather patterns to the direction you're facing and those sort of things. Unfortunately, we had our creek flooded a little bit,
Hmm.
and it dumped an amazing amount of sand. I'm not even sure where it all came from. And it took down part of the fence that's around our orchard. So that's another thing I was working on today is trying to so it just completely folded the fence and buried it. So I'm
Oh,
trying
wow.
to dig it out to put it back up before all the deer and everybody discover, those apple buds.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I'm trying to figure out whether to put tree tubes around I just don't like using tree tubes except
Yeah.
for chestnuts and hazelnuts. They'll come and eat them down, but for the most part I leave the apples pretty much alone. So,
We have the sheep that we have are called baby doll sheep.
really,
And yeah, they're adorable because they look like they're always smiling, for one. And another thing is they are, you can put them in an orchard and they'll leave the trees alone. And so
really.
that's essentially why we got them, because we have, apples and pears and cherries and uh, jujubes and apricots and figs and just, we have a little mini orchard there. But we can put the baby doll sheep in there, and they'll just graze the grass around the base of them, and they'll leave the trees alone. So it's been
Wow.
fantastic. That's what we've been working on the past couple of years, raising our flock of baby doll sheep. And they're adorable, and they're sweet. They have great personalities, and they're really good for an orchard too. And they'll leave the tree alone. Unlike goats. We had goats in the past, and if they get there, they'll just strip everything down.
So are they wool sheep or are they hair sheep?
Yeah, wool sheep. My wife is spinning some right now,
Really?
downstairs. And so another thing we've been doing is collecting shelf mushrooms and some moss and lichen and stuff for dyeing the wool. And
Hmm,
she was actually talking, since you mentioned comfrey, we have a lot of comfrey growing throughout the place. So that's apparently, I just learned today, that's good for dyeing as well.
really?
So we're just always trying to learn stuff and just trying to keep a beginner's mind.
Yeah, so natural dye. That's pretty cool. Yeah, send me a picture of the baby doll sheep. I'd like to see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to.
Wow, that sounds neat. What other cool projects do you have planned for 2025?
My main thing I'm focusing on is the nature school startup. I'm trying to get parents and educators to take their kids outside more.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a lot of training of teachers over the years too, and I enjoy that just as much as I enjoy taking groups of students into the woods and teaching. That's great too. But I also enjoy training other adults to do that
Wow.
because that's fun because it I help bring out their natural curiosity and inquisitiveness and playfulness that we all have in us. It just kind of becomes dulled, over time as we grow up and get caught up
Yeah.
in the routine. But we still have a childlike wonder for, this miracle of creation that's all around us, even if we're not tapped into it. So I like to help people discover that and then take that out into the classroom, their own classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always enjoyed training and working with staff and making sure that they focus on safety first and making sure that they have a very like positive, optimistic outlook to every encounter that they handle.
Wow.
And so I'm doing a lot of online training with the Nature School startup. I'm going to have an online course um, that will provide you with everything from the logistics of academics to the finances, marketing, and everything. So I'm trying to get as many people to start their own school as possible because that's going to have the biggest effect long term over our culture. And just doing some little classes here and there online. I was working on this today in my head in the garden, as we used to play a game on the bus called Pocket Survival. So
Hmm.
as we would get the kids drop, the parents would drop them off, we'd hop on a bus and then go out to the woods. And so on the bus, we're always trying to keep it entertaining and but also educational. And
Mm-hmm.
so we played a game called Pocket Survival, where if you imagine you were lost in the woods and all you had were items in your pocket, and what could you use them for? So we would pull out, car keys and then get the kids to brainstorm as many different ideas for the use of a car key. So it could be like a spear tip, or you could use it to carve into a tree if you're lost. You could use it as a weight if you're fishing. You could use it as you could jingle them to make noise to scare away bears. The kids come up with all these amazing ideas. So I'm offering classes like that, how to work with kids using minimal materials and supplies. We don't have to go out to the outdoor store and spend hundreds of dollars on gear. You know, just go out and have fun, even if it's in your own backyard.
Sure. Wow, that's great. So if folks are interested in that, how do they contact you?
Thank you. Natureschoolstartup.com, right? You can just go there and there's a place to enter in your email, and I'll send out newsletters and more information about my course and um, helping to walk. It's really exciting for me helping to walk parents through this journey. A lot of them contact me and they want to start off, they want to do this, they don't know where to begin though. And sort of
Mm-hmm.
walking them through the whole process and then being there and available for them if they have questions, if they want to email me or call me and say, I have this kid who's just seems bored, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have all these fun activities in mind, and the kid is just bored and he just hits a stick against a tree. So okay, I love questions like that, right? Because I've seen it all in my 20 plus years. And I know that kid is just trying to express a need that's not being met, but he doesn't have the right words. So being able to give the teacher that sort of information on how to incorporate that kid who might be bored or acting up or squirrely or whatever kind of issue that they're having,
Hmm.
and finding out what the kid is interested in nature, and then making that connection. So being able to do that, I'm really excited about because I love just helping others problem solve.
Wow. And I think also getting them to the point where they're observing, like you were saying with the tracking, is like what do you see? Because boredom is not necessarily bad if it's
No,
channeled boredom.
yeah, yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, boredom is great because every kid, when you turn off the TV and make them go outside, they're going to say they're bored. That will only last for 60 seconds until
Hmm.
they see a frog, and then they're going to run off and try to catch it. So boredom is necessary because that forces the child to be creative.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah. I remember that when I was a kid, we had some tough times and being outside, it was just like that. It was like an escape. And in some cases it was more fun than watching TV because it was
yeah,
deeper.
absolutely.
The imagination was much more deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And then being outside when you're a kid, you have so much freedom and independence and autonomy. And that's another thing we crave naturally is freedom. And it's great when we could just like disappear with a group of kids and go build a tree house or a bike
Mhm.
ramp or whatever it is. My buddy and I spent a whole summer digging a hole and making an underground house. Um, yeah, so the kids get to experience nature, which they crave, and also freedom, which we all crave as human beings. And so that was one of my fondest memories of childhood. It's just being outside and given that freedom to do anything we want. Drink out of the water, come back home to drink out of the water hose, and then go disappear for a couple more hours, and then come home when the street lights are on.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was great. And you see those pictures where kids are like they built a ramp for their bike and they're jumping over their friends and people are cringing like you're gonna fall on top of them and yeah, those are good times.
Part of it. Good times. I'm thinking about I want to write an essay about this, and it's kind of tough. But my friend Chris and I, we went. There was a huge oak tree in the woods, a few miles away, and the branches were so big, you could have 12 kids just hanging out, each on a different branch, and they were massive. And we were climbing up, and we would just hang out there and tell jokes and read comic books. And I don't know how we did this, but we hung a bicycle up 30 feet in the air. And looking back, I don't remember like how we tied it up. I don't remember the knots or anything, but it was so much fun that we could just sit on a bicycle and pedal, 20, 30 feet off the ground. And we had such great memories. And two, it helps us moments like that, even though it sounds counterintuitive, but giving kids the freedom to do risk assessment and risky
Hmm.
play actually helps their decision making process. They have less injuries
Hmm.
than a child who's very sheltered and they get to go out once. Um, they don't have as much experience or exercise of these different functions. And so letting them play outdoors is actually makes them safer because they're constantly testing themselves. They're constantly finding the edge. They're constantly finding um, the margin and that space between danger and safety. And they're always testing it and they grow as a result. So actually kids who play outside become safer and in the long term, they make safer decisions, whether it's like in their personal relationships or in the business world, those sort of things. They're finding as well too. A lot of that has its roots in outdoor play in childhood.
No, that's great. Good. Any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate you having me on again. It's great. I love what you're doing. It's one of the beautiful things about social media gets a lot of flack, for
Hmm.
being so negative or so shallow and very, it's focused on trends and influencers. But, there's an amazing group of people out there doing some amazing stuff that we have access to, which blows my
Sure.
mind. That, with a click of a button, you can find out, gardening techniques, or you can share seeds with someone from around the globe. You can find people doing all sorts of amazing projects in restoration and restoration ecology and regenerative work. And we could sit there and go down a rabbit hole of doom and all of the stuff online, social media, but just skip it and find all the cool stuff that's happening. And so I find that really exciting. And especially all the positive feedback that I get for people who want to spend more time outdoors with their children and with their kids. We're starting to see that generation that grew up with screens.
Right.
Um, that generation that were given screens when they were little, they're starting to grow up and have kids, and they don't want that for them, right? So
Mm,
for a lot of them, they're taking their kids outside for the first time, and which is they didn't have the childhood that you and I had.
sure.
So that's very heartwarming too, is seeing that trend as well. There's sort of a resurgence of, hey, it's a beautiful day. Let's all go outside and have a picnic. Let's put our phones away and go for a walk in the woods.
That's right. Yeah, you were talking about a seed swap. Everybody needs to get together and do a seed swap. I've never seen grown men get so excited as when you pull out some rare seed that they've never seen before, but they've been thinking about, and they go, "Oh, wow!" I got to get a copy of that, or can you put a few of
Hmm.
those in this envelope for me,
Yeah,
or
yeah, and
even
how amazing that we live in this time where we can do that, where we can share seeds with people on the other
sure.
side of the country, and these rare varieties that we've never heard of. We're spoiled, and it's crazy that not more people take advantage of that stuff. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it makes grown folks get all giddy and excited, because that's what we're supposed to do as humans. We're just supposed to cultivate the land and cultivate joy.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds good. And even like you were saying, to have a virtual seed swap, get together with those folks that you've been hanging out with and Twitter and say, hey, let's have a call. We'll go through the seed box and we'll see the same thing that you see face to face, right? Oh wow, that's
Absolutely.
great. Can you send me something like that? Like I talked to Grant Payne, and then he's got all these seeds I've never heard of before, and then he's got stories around him. That's the best part is the stories around him. Oh, I grew
Oh
this
yeah.
and then it went crazy, or I thought it was going to be blue and it turned out to be, yellow or something and stuff. And I thought it was burdock and it turned out to be something else, things like that. So, yeah, that's super awesome. Well, great. Thanks, Roman. This is a great talk. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me back on. I appreciate it. And all your listeners for tuning in, and everybody get out there and keep doing the good work.
You bet. Take care.
All right. Thanks.